to Ginny's, where East meets West, and a slice of Eastern philosophy becomes a part of Western thinking. I'm your host, Ginny Gong. My first guest is someone who not only understands what it takes to get an idea or a concept onto paper and then into law, but what it means to interpret and apply the law. She is an attorney with a master's degree in education and a bachelor's degree in English. This combination of skills and training has enabled her to fulfill the responsibilities of her current position as a legislative analyst for the County Council on issues relating to health, human services, human rights, recreation, and education. She is an active volunteer with a number of community-based organizations. Please join me in welcoming Vivian Yoa. Welcome, Vivian.
Thanks.
You know, what you do is always such behind-the-scenes work. Let's begin by discussing what is public policy? What does that mean? What does that word, what does that concept mean?
Well, as I understand it, public policy refers to really any action or decision that the government takes in response to a community need.
Mm-hmm. Right. So basically you're dealing with a lot of issues that arise. But as we all know, issues are usually not black and white, that there are a lot of different perspectives, and I would imagine that with each perspective, you've got, advocates, right?
Absolutely.
And this is what you have to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a good thing?
Well, developing a public policy is a very complex process. Mm-hmm. So you have interest groups and individuals trying to influence actions by policymakers. I believe that it's a good thing to get as many different perspectives as you can on a particular policy decision or issue, because we live in a diverse community and it's made up of many different cultures, beliefs, values. And in order to make good policy, it's important to hear from as many different folks as you can.
So what about, people in our community who don't understand that they have a say, that their ideas are, just as good and we want to hear them? How do they get to put in their 2 cents?
Well, I think it's really important for policymakers to seek input from really the whole community. And one drawback from if you just hear from advocates is that you may be missing out on the full range of perspectives in the community. Mm-hmm. So I think, it's really, really important to solicit input and to have consideration of, the perspective of individuals who aren't necessarily going to become active in the political process. Low-income people, new immigrants, they may be discouraged, they may not understand how the system works, and so.
I would bet in your job there must be certain names that just pop up on every issue, right? You hear from them all the time. They have an opinion about everything. Am I right?
Yep, absolutely. And really, on any given issue, you have advocates. You're going to on different perspectives.
Right.
Yeah. So we definitely hear from. There are definitely people in the community that are very active, and then there are others that, are less active.
And how does someone like you? How do you reach out to the immigrants, which a lot of people who watch my show are? How do you reach out to them to get a sense of where they are?
Well, I think there's different ways to do that, within government. So within policy, it's not just the county council, but the county executive. And the county executive has different groups that he has for, different ethnicities, different cultures, different, faith groups, etc.
Right.
So that's one way that you reach out. I think the council also has its own, mechanisms for public forums. They get out into the community to find out what people are saying, and, they talk to different constituents and different groups.
So let's take a look at what happens to an issue or an idea and how that eventually becomes a policy. Because we all know when something becomes a policy, it's like a law,
Sure.
And there's enforcement, there's implementation. But from concept to policy, what happens in between? And does it happen quickly? Give us a sense.
Well, I was just going to say, too, about policy. Policy is more than just law. It's really anything. It could be regulation. It could be a judicial opinion. It could be, a funding priority. So government does a lot of different kinds of policies. And, for things that I work on, one example that I've had recently is usually in developing policies, it starts by trying to address a problem that's come to the attention of policymakers. So recently, I think the farmers market community in the county was concerned about some of the licensing and regulation policies that they were having to comply with. So they made that known to some of the council members. And as a result, the chairs of our HHS and Fed committees had a session to talk about licensing fees and the differences between local and state regulation requirements and regulating food products at farmers markets.
Right.
And what I do is, like, for that session, I kind of do a lot of the background research and analysis of the different issues,
Right.
That there are different fee structures for different kinds of foods and things like that.
And then you make recommendations to the committee?
Absolutely.
Okay,
and then
based on your research?
Absolutely.
Right.
And during the discussion, too, other issues come up. So, during that discussion, the Department of Health and Human Services, their licensure and regulatory division, basically said, well, we're thinking about restructuring our fees. And during the discussion, there was, interest in figuring out how the department could work better with the farmers market food vendors to make sure that they were complying with food safety regulations.
Right.
And so, through all that, at the executive level, at least, policy changed because of the needs of the community.
Now, this process usually entails a long period of time, does it not? I mean, it doesn't happen over a couple of weeks. Is that a good thing? And should changes in policy take long periods of time?
Well, I think it depends on what the issue is that you're trying to change. There are procedures in the law that allow you to shorten time frames to get things done if there's a need, a need for immediate action. But we have processes in place in law, in developing any kind of law, because we want to make sure that our processes are fair and thoughtful.
Yeah.
So, we want to make sure that people know that there's, a policy that's being considered. We want them to give them time to provide input on it so that we can understand what the implications are going to be. And we want time to make sure that we're thinking about all different sides and researching and making sure that these are fair and well-reasoned kinds of decisions. And so, while it may take time, like we want to make sure these are policies that potentially may be in place for a very long time, and we don't want to do it, willy-nilly.
Right. Yeah, we don't want to jump into it and just make a decision that we may regret down the line.
Right.
Sure, soliciting public input, it is time-consuming, but I think in the end, when you make a decision, even if someone didn't support that, if there was a group that did not support the decision, there has to be some understanding that there was a lot of research that went into it, right?
Absolutely, and I think in probably any, there's very few decisions that are made that you don't have, people that are disagreeing
Right.
with it. But I think if people feel like they have the opportunity to be heard, to influence a decision, I think people can kind of accept, like, this is the way our system works, and at least we're being fair and getting them the opportunity to influence.
Well, very few Asian Americans, pursue public policy as attorneys. Many of them are in corporate America. Why is that so?
I can only speak from my own experience and observations. So I think there are probably various factors that
Do you think
go into
language,
that.
think that's a factor?
Well, sure. I mean, I think that maybe some Asian cultures may look at success in a different way. Like, they might think of things in monetary terms or things that affect their immediate families. And I think that sometimes Asian cultures look at their sphere of influence, very narrowly, as far as, their friends, their family, maybe even the culture group that they belong to, instead of necessarily looking at, broad policies and the community as a whole or society as a whole. And I think the other thing that might influence that is, how long have they been in the country?
Yeah.
Because if they're not comfortable with the language or, the political system, they don't know much about the political system, they might not be interested in being in a job that, you're doing a lot of that work there.
Well, I know the job that you do, you have to be, you have to understand politics. You have to be able to write well. You need to be articulate. And certainly if you're a new immigrant or if English is not your native language, I can see where that can be, limiting. Let's take a look at, you're an attorney, you're a legislative analyst. How do the two complement each other in terms of helping you understand the bigger picture?
Well, it's funny, a lot of the skills transfer between the two kinds of jobs. As an attorney, you do a lot of analytical work, a lot of writing, a lot of communicating, speaking. And so I think when I practiced law and after I got out of law school, I got a lot of practice doing those kinds of things. And so they transfer very well to this position.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever think about being an attorney not in the public sector?
Well, actually I was. Right out of law school, I practiced in a large firm, and it was a great job. I was compensated very well, but really what motivates me in this job is, and it sounds kind of cliche and corny, but I really like being able to make the community a better place, to contribute to thoughtful, meaningful decisions for people, to help people, and to help make government work well.
It's almost like Kennedy, right? The call, right? Ask not what your country. I think that's really what public service is all about.
Absolutely.
We're all in it to make a difference in the world that we live in.
It's very fulfilling, and actually, this job, it's one of the great things about it is it's very interesting. It's intellectually challenging, and I see new issues every day. I'm always learning something new, and that's for me very enticing.
Well, great. Keep up the good work, Vivian. Thank you very much for joining me. It's time for us to take a break. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
In nature, we see reflections of our children. The tree is the strong one, the ocean rambunctious and untamed. Like our children, each brings something wonderful and unique. They add color, they bring life. And to choose the sky over the water would be like choosing one child over the next. EarthShare, the world's leading environmental groups working together. To learn how you and your employer can help, visit our website.
This is the story about a group of kids who volunteered.
Doing something nice for someone. We fixed stuff. Did some art projects with the kids. We fixed up his house. We worked in the woods.
Cleaned up the park. Did something for the planet. We just did it.
No other reason. And you know what? It was great.
At first, they didn't know each other.
Well, that didn't last long.
This guy is really funny.
Me and Ace are my new friends.
Are you into it?
Call 4-H or check out our website at areyouintoit.com.
Welcome back to Ginny's, where East meets West. My next guest is a successful dentist, an entrepreneur, and an international humanitarian. She has dedicated countless hours and dollars to helping the poor and needy children in Thailand with dental and medical needs in the aftermath of the tsunami and other natural disasters with her nonprofit Smiles on Wings. She is also committed to providing care for Maryland's Medicaid children. Ultimately, it's all about the children for this community activist. Join me in welcoming Usa Bunnag. Usa, welcome.
Hi.
Wow, you're doing some wonderful things internationally. I'm very pleased to, see all the great things that you're doing out there. Let's talk a little bit about how you went from an immigrant to this country, and what were you, 14 when you came? At the age of 14, you come to this country, you're an immigrant. And here you are, a successful businesswoman, the ultimate volunteer. Tell us about that rise in.
I came here when I was 14, and then I left home when I was 18 and set out on my own. And at 19, I got a job working in a dental office, and I fell.
So you were a new immigrant, only here 4 years, and you decided to go off on your own. And
I fell in love with dentistry, and I just had this, feeling that this is what I want to do. So my employer encouraged me to go to Montgomery College and take pre-dentistry, and I got married when I was 21. My husband was very supportive in my decisions of going to school. So I was working full time, going to school at night, raised a family, and then after 5 years at Montgomery College, I was accepted at Howard University, and in 4 years I finished, dental school.
Wow.
And started my practice.
Wow.
It was like,
and I understand you have a practice of just women.
I think primarily, I think that was by chance, just because I felt that it was necessary to be able to have a nurturing office, and we have a group of women dentists that would get together every month, and from this group I met these dentists, and we tend to support each other, and we got along very well, and I thought this would be a great opportunity for me to provide a great care for my patients, and then have a very nurturing practice.
And it seems that you've actually lucked out in terms of a number of people that have served as mentors for you. How important have they been in your successes?
Very important. When I was in studying to be in pre-dentistry, my boss was my mentor. And after I graduated from dental school, I found a couple of mentors that had helped me to become a good dentist, technically and professionally, and also as a woman, being in a dental field, sometimes you want to find another successful women to help mentor you to become successful as well.
The role model.
Yes, role model.
If they can do it, you can do it as well.
So I have been pretty, very lucky to have that opportunity, and I'm doing that as well for the next generations of dentists that are coming out.
Yes, I'm aware that now you are a mentor for other young women and men. I'm sure that are moving into the profession. It seems as though your heart keeps going back to Thailand. There's a draw there.
I think I left Thailand when I was 14. I did not go back until 26 years later, and I went back, and the first time I fell in love with the people, the culture, and the heritage, and most importantly, it is the roots of who I am. And
it took you 26 years later to see it from a different perspective.
Yes, from a different perspective, and I just felt connected. And and it was 7 years ago, and I have been going back 3-4 times a year ever since.
And do you still have family back there?
I have my sister there. I had some other cousins and relative distant cousins there, and but both my parents passed away, so it's still there's still connection over there. As a matter of fact, I have a house there in Thailand too.
So you have something to go back to.
I have something to go back, and then the many children that I had mentor and help in the last 5 years during my my work.
Well, let's talk about your work, your volunteer life, and why you go back to Thailand. You co-founded an organization called Smiles on Wings. Tell us about that group.
We started out providing dentistry. When I went back to Thailand for the first time, I do notice, like when I go out into different villages, a lot of the children have, did not have good teeth, and they had, toothaches and had nowhere of going to, to get care. And I thought, I want to be able to use my gift, my talent, to be able to bring help to these unfortunate, children. And so I came back and got together, a group of people to go with me and to do our missions. And being able to do that was really fulfilling, and was able to, taking care of the children with toothache, and they're able to function. And
so that must have been amazing. I bet when you go back to some of the villages, they've never even been to a dentist. Or had that kind of care.
It has been very fulfilling. Case in point, the last time when we were on our mission, we drove in the riverbed for 6 hours to this village. And as we were setting up, and and a lot of the children were already waiting, so we took care of all of these children that have not seen a dentist, never seen a dentist before. In the morning, we went to another village, driving in the riverbed, pick up another group of patients, and a young mother brought her son, a 4-year-old with her. He had so many rotten teeth, and he was in pain, and the mother was crying, begging for us to help. We ended up doing 7 extractions for him. Normally, they would not be able to go out. It would take them 2 days to walk to the nearest hospital to get care, and they just didn't have the money and the transportation to do that. So that was very fulfilling for me.
So how difficult is it to pull together a crew of other professionals? What about equipment? How does one do that when you go to a country where you have that, where areas are that level of poverty?
We have been very lucky that, through word of mouth, we were able to get volunteers as far away as Seattle and Arizona and New York, and through our dental organizations, we have different ads that we put in, and and just referrals,
and people volunteer.
Yes, and a lot of my patients also volunteer with me, to go with me. So it's been very, it's getting a lot easier now, and I think, and also after the tsunami, we had some publicity, and that, and since we had a very successful mission, that was the draw for the professionals.
Wow, that's amazing. I know that you were thinking about, some kind of a mobile dental unit. Has that come about, so that you actually have the equipment that you need? Because when you're extracting teeth, I would assume that they need to.
Through the years, we had accumulated and set up our own mobile units, and at this point we are waiting to get some grants from the American Dental Associations. If that were to happen, we would have enough funding to put together a well-equipped, mobile dental unit. So keeping my fingers crossed.
Right. Now, are there any international grants or that kind of thing for what you're doing?
We haven't been really pursuing that as much because of what, most of the time I'm funding the trip myself. But now we are moving to the next step. I have just gathered up, great board members for Smiles on Wings. So now we're moving from like a mom and pop kind of organizations to a higher level of functions, with the organization. So we're pursuing that.
Well, I also know that the work with needy children is not just in Thailand. I know that you also provide a lot of care for the Medicaid patients here in this country. How is that impacted what you do here?
It has been, what started out was 7 or 8 years ago. I started out participating with this program through a loan repayment program, and it was a three-year commitment. And after I finished with the program, I was the only dentist during that time in Montgomery County that would take these children. Wow. And I just felt that I really could not just let these children just go without a dentist. Right. And I had made such an impact on a lot of these children who normally would not have dental work.
Right.
And so I had continued to participate, and now we have very active program in the office, and still and able to treat more than 50 children per week. Wow. In our office. And it had brought to me it's very fulfilling, and it's able to help these children, and able to get to have these children just be able to go to bed without a toothache. That's important.
Well, you're doing so many wonderful things abroad as well as, in this country, and in particular right here in Maryland. I wish you well. I commend you for all that you're doing, and let us know if there's some way in which we can support what you're doing out there in the community.
Okay, thank you.
That concludes our program for today. Thanks to my guests, Vivian Yoa and Usa Bunnag, for their commitment to community involvement, and to all of you for joining us. Stay well, and we'll see you next time.